So before we dive into Hamlet, I actually want to talk really briefly about a different book, not a play, but a book about plays called Backwards and Forwards. So this is all about script analysis. And I want to read one sentence from here where the author, David Ball, says, William Shakespeare's Hamlet is referred to over and over in this book. Read Hamlet and have it at hand when reading Backwards and Forwards. That's really fascinating because I can't think of very many books that start by telling you to read another book. But of course, the assumption is that you already know this play, that if you're studying theater at all, you're familiar with Hamlet. It is the most famous play by the most famous playwright of all time. But why is that? Well, I hope by the end of this series, we'll be able to answer that question. One thing we got to talk about right away is that just looking at Hamlet, you can tell why it maybe stands out a little bit. This is the play we did last, A Midsummer Night's Dream. And this right here is Hamlet. So as you can see, Hamlet is a pretty beefy play. And in fact, it's the longest play that Shakespeare wrote. So that is part of the appeal or part of the reputation of it. It's the most Shakespeare you can get in a Shakespeare play. But I would argue it's not just the size of the play, that there's something deeper to it than that. And we'll see if we can, like I said, figure that out as we go along. So let's dive in to Act 1, Scene 1. There is a link in the description below to the Folger edition of this play, the digital copy, if you want to follow along there. But any copy of the play should work. So we have Bernardo and Francisco, who are two sentinels, two guards. Bernardo says, "Who's there?" Famous opening for a play. Almost every line in this play is famous by this point because it's such a famous play. But the opening line, it's worth talking a little bit about. Who's there tells us that people can't see exactly what's going on. We'll figure out in a few more lines that it's nighttime, so you don't know exactly what's happening. But it's also a question. And it makes sense that this play starts with a question. The most famous line in all of Shakespeare, all of theater, maybe all of the English language is "to be or not to be." That is the question, which is, of course, from Hamlet. So we start with a question. There'll be a lot more questions as we go. Who's there? Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself. Explain or reveal your identity. Long live the king. Bernardo, he. You come most carefully upon your hour. 'Tis now struck 12. Get thee to bed, Francisco. For this relief much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold, and I am sick at heart. So in those quick little lines, we see that people are a little on edge, right? This guard is wanting to identify who it might be that is approaching, and they're very quick to identify who they are. But of course, I mean, guards are supposed to guard things, so that makes sense. More interestingly, we see that it is cold outside. We see that it is past midnight, and we know that we are at a place that we're at the castle, right? We should be able to tell what's the set, but just in the script itself, you can already tell it's a place worth guarding, right? For this relief, much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold, and I am sick at heart. Have you had quiet guard? So Bernardo asks that of Francisco. Have you had quiet guard, right? What has been happening? Not a mouse stirring. Well, good night. If you do meet Horatio and Marcellus, the rivals of my watch, bid them make haste. So rivals here means fellows. It's one of those words that's changed meaning a little bit since Shakespeare's time. So it's not like a rival, like a competitor. It's just a person who does the same thing here, not necessarily a competitor. And then we have Horatio and Marcellus, the people just mentioned, enter. I think I hear them. Stand ho, who's there? Friends to this ground, and liegemen to the Dane. So this play takes place in Denmark, so the Dane would be the king of Denmark. Give you good night. Oh, farewell, honest soldier. Who hath relieved you? Bernardo hath my place. Give you good night. So Francisco exits. So now we've got three characters on stage. Marcellus and Bernardo, and then Horatio. And Horatio stands out. You'll be able to tell in these next couple lines why Horatio is a little different than these other characters. Holla, Bernardo. Funny line. Holla, Bernardo. Say, what? Is Horatio there? A piece of him. So that line, Horatio is saying a piece of him. It could mean that he's not fully awake yet, like, oh, part of me is here. The part of me that's awake is here, right? It could mean that he's like freezing and like shriveling up, like, whoa, it's so cold, like I'm not all the way here. It could be that it's dark and you can barely see each other. Or it could be just being humorous, right? We don't know exactly. That's what makes plays interesting. You can play things different ways. But either way, Horatio stands out from the other characters, and we'll see that even more. Welcome, Horatio. Welcome, good Marcellus. What has this thing appeared again tonight? I have seen nothing. So that word, thing, what has this thing appeared again tonight, makes the audience lean in. We already got that line, have you had quiet guard? Like, anything interesting happened while you were on patrol? And now we get, has this thing appeared? Not intruder, not thief, not culprit, a thing. And we'll see why it's described as a thing. Horatio says, "'Tis but our fantasy, and will not let belief take hold of him, touching this dreaded sight twice seen of us." So Marcellus and Bernardo have twice seen this thing, but Horatio thinks they're making it up, or it's, just their imagination. "Therefore, I have entreated him, along with us, to watch the minutes of this night, that, if again this apparition come, he may approve our eyes and speak to it." So there's the thing, the apparition. It's a ghost that's been seen. "Tush, tush, 'twill not appear. Sit down a while, and let us once again assail your ears, that are so fortified against our story, what we have 2 nights seen. Well, sit we down, and let us hear Bernardo speak of this." So that's what sets Horatio apart from the others. He doesn't believe that this ghost is real, or this thing they've been talking about is real, but they've seen it twice, apparently, so they do believe it. And they've brought Horatio there to corroborate what they've seen and prove to him that a ghost has been wandering the ramparts of the castle, the battlements of the castle. "Last night of all, when yon same star that's westward from the pole," so that'd be the North Star, "hath made his course to illume that part of heaven where now it burns, Marcellus and myself, the bell then beating 1." So he's telling him about the last time the ghost appeared. And here we have ghost appears. Enter ghost. Famous stage direction. A ghost appears on stage. "Peace, break thee off. Look where it comes again. And the same figure like the king that's dead. Thou art a scholar. Speak to it, Horatio. Looks he not like the king? Mark it, Horatio. Most like it harrows me with fear and wonder." So harrows me with fear and wonder. So a harrow was, this is the reason why I love the Folger edition. It means torment, but it's a farm implement used to break up the ground. So I have a nice picture in the edition there. So you can see that is used to break up the ground, like aerate the ground. So that would be a painful thing to have happen to you. So it'd be tormenting, right? So we see Horatio is a scholar. That's one of the reasons why he's skeptical of the ghost, and one of the reasons why they've brought him there to talk to the ghost. But of course, now he believes because he sees the ghost right in front of him. "It would be spoke to. Speak to it, Horatio. What art thou that usurpest this time of night, together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march? By heaven, I charge thee, speak. It is offended. See, it stalks away. Stay, speak, speak. I charge thee, speak." Ghost exits. So charge means command. And while the ghost didn't talk, the other characters on stage did. And you'd be able to see this watching the play, but reading it, you have to envision it. We get a description of what the ghost is dressed like and who the ghost appears to be. And that is the former king of Denmark, the king of Denmark who has died. That happens to be Hamlet, not Hamlet on the title. That would be the son of this thing, the ghost looks like. So Hamlet Sr., former king of Denmark, is who they say the ghost resembles, and he seems to be dressed for war. But they try and command the ghost. They charge, "I command thee, I charge thee, speak," and it just vanishes. "'Tis gone and will not answer. How now, Horatio, you tremble and look pale. Is not this something more than fantasy? What think you on?" So Bernardo's happy to be proven right. Like, look how scared you are. See, told you we weren't making it up. "Before my God, I might not this believe without the sensible and true avouch of mine own eyes." Avouch here means testimony. So the only reason I was able to believe it is I saw it. And that's a theme that will happen in Hamlet as well. You have suspicion, but can you trust suspicion? Can you trust your gut feeling, your suspicions, the supernatural? Can you trust those things, or do you have to prove them and see them with your own eyes first? Is it not like the king? As thou art to thyself, so he looks as much like the king as you look like you. Such was the very armor he had on when he the ambitious Norway combated. So frowned he once when in an angry parley he smote the sledded Pollux on the ice. 'Tis strange. So we get this history of warfare, wars against Norway and wars against Poland, that this king, who the ghost looks like, had fought when he was alive. Thus twice before, and jump at this hour, at this dead hour. Jump there means exactly, and exactly at this dead hour. With martial stalk hath he gone by our watch. And what particular thought to work I know not, but in the gross and scope of mine opinion, this bodes some strange eruption to our state. That's a confusing line, but what Horatio is saying, he's like, I don't know the exact reason why the ghost would appear, but I suspect it has something to do with the state of the country, that there's something political, something happening with the country that would cause it to appear. Good, now sit down and tell me, he that knows, meaning you, Horatio, why this same strict and most observant watch so nightly toils the subject of the land, and why such daily cast of brazen cannon and foreign mart for implements of war, why such impressive shipwrights, whose sore task does not divide the Sunday from the week, what might be toward that this sweaty haste doth make the night joint laborer with the day? Who is it that can inform me? So Marcellus is not part of the court. He's not a scholar, but he has been observing things that seem to suggest that not everything is going hunky-dory in Denmark, that there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. Something is up. And the list of examples he gives are a little hard to figure out, but just kind of walking through them. He talks about the nightly watch, which I believe is referring to him and the other guards. Why are they always on patrol? Now, it could also be the watch of the ghost, but the ghost doesn't seem to appear every single night. So I think that means them. We also get that casts of brazen cannon are being made. So they're making more and more cannons. And foreign mart for implements of war means that weapons are being shipped in, and that shipwrights, people who build ships, are working in a way that it does not divide the Sunday from the week. So they would have gotten Sunday off and probably worked the other 6 days of the week, but they're working so much, it's like they're never stopping. Like no one's taking a break for Sunday. So there's this urgency to their labor, that they are working a lot of overtime, so to speak. And people are working at night too, make night joint labor with the day, which is interesting because we'll see a line about time being out of joint, which is kind of mirroring this sentiment that something is going on because people are not doing their typical routines. Everything seems to be pushing toward war. And Horatio suspects that. He says, that can I can tell you, that can I. At least the whisper, like the rumor, the whisper goes so. Our last king, whose image even but now appeared to us, was, as you know, by Fortinbras of Norway, thereto pricked on by a most emulate pride, dared to the combat, in which our valiant Hamlet, for so this side of our known world esteemed him, did slay this Fortinbras, who by a sealed compact well ratified by law and heraldry did forfeit with his life all those his lands which he stood seized of to the conqueror. So we get that there was this battle between Hamlet of Denmark and Fortinbras of Norway. Now, both these people are dead now. The play just started. Both of them are already dead, but we have to know this sort of historical background. They went to combat against each other. Hamlet killed Fortinbras in that combat, and as part of the agreed upon rules, took possession of a bunch of land from Fortinbras. So the history lesson here is that Denmark and Norway are rivals in the modern sense of the word, not just fellows like it was used earlier. Modern rivals, modern sense of the word rival, enemies, and that when Hamlet kills Fortinbras, he takes some land. Against the which a moiety, which means appropriate portion, against the which a moiety competent was gauged by our king, which had returned to the inheritance of Fortinbras, had he been vanquisher, as by the same cormart and carriage of the article designed, his fell to Hamlet. So basically, had it gone the other way, land would have gone to Fortinbras. So there was like agreed upon, whoever survives wins this land from each other as well. Now, so that was the past. Now we get to the present. Now, sir, young Fortinbras of unimproved metal, hot and full, hath in the skirts of Norway here and there sharked up a list of lawless resolutes for food and diet to some enterprise that hath stomach in it. So you see a lot of talk of food there. So young Fortinbras, this would be the heir to the throne. I believe it's the son of Fortinbras, not the nephew. That gets a little confusing in this play. They talk about it again later. But basically, the heir to the throne, probably son. Fortinbras's son, young Fortinbras, is preparing for what might be war. So you can see where Horatio is going with this, that it seems we might be looking for a return to war, revenge, or an attempt to take back that land. So we're talking about Fortinbras, who's in charge of Norway, and he's dead. And Hamlet, who's in charge of Denmark, and he's dead. But now we've got young Fortinbras. And of course, we know Hamlet's important because his name's on the book cover, right? It's the title of the play. But we haven't met him yet. And he doesn't quite line up with his Fortinbras foil character there, that parallel character, which we'll see in the next scene. Which is no other, as it doth well appear unto our state, but to recover of us by strong hand in terms compulsatory those foresaid lands, so by his father lost. And this, I take it, is the main motive of our preparations, the source of this our watch, and the chief head of this post-haste and rummage in the land. So basically, as I said earlier, the reason the ghost appeared is that war is approaching. That's why the ghost appeared. That's why people are building all these ships and ordering weapons and all that. It is because we are going back to war with our old enemy, Norway. So the last generation's fight is about to become the current generation's fight. Bernardo says, I think it be no other, but even so. Well, may it sort that this portentous figure comes armed through our watch, so like the king that was and is the question of these wars. Now, the word that I'm not even entirely sure I'm saying right, portentous, is a difficult one, but it has a couple interesting meanings. It can mean solemn. It can also mean a precursor to something big. And it can also mean an exceptional person. And what I love about that word choice is that I think the ghost means all three of those things. Sorrow of, being dead, the ghost, that something big is going to happen, and that also the ghost, if it is the ghost of the king, would be an important person. The ghost of an important person, right? Horatio says, a mot, which is like a speck of dust, but it can also mean like a small thing. A mot is to trouble the mind's eye. In the most high and palmy state of Rome, a little ere the mightiest Julius fell, the graves stood tenantless. So here we're going to talk about Rome. And you might be like, man, this play is a little confused. It is. In between when the ghost arrives is confusing. We're going to understand it as best we can. It's not the most essential stuff for understanding the overall play. The whole thing is not geopolitical theorizing. Very little of the play is actually. So we're going to talk about historical example of Rome. Palmy state would be like bearing a palm. So very important. Palmy state of Rome, a little ere the mightiest Julius fell. So before Julius Caesar died, before he was assassinated, the graves stood tenantless. And the sheeted dead did squeak and gibber in the Roman streets. The dead walked the streets, according to Horatio, according to history here. As stars with trains of fire and dews of blood, that would be like comets and meteors, disasters in the sun, and the moist star upon whose influence Neptune's empire stands was sick almost to doomsday with eclipse. So we see eclipses, comets, ghosts walking around. And even the like precurse of feared events, the harbingers preceding still the fates and prologue to this omen coming on, have heaven and earth together demonstrated unto our climatures and countrymen. So what Horatio is basically saying is there is historical precedence, according to him, that when political action is taken, when kings die, when wars start, when assassinations happen, that we see reflections in nature, like natural events, but also things that are supernatural. So eclipses, ghosts, nature, supernatural, those things happen when big things happen to the kings, especially. And this shows up in a lot of Shakespeare plays. You see it in Julius Caesar, you see it in Macbeth. They thought kings were very important, that they were, or, put in place by God. So if something happened to them, rulers, if something happened to them, that God would reflect that in nature. And before we can get into any more theoretical history, the ghost thankfully appears. But soft, behold, lo, where it comes again. I'll cross it, though it blasts me, stay illusion. So cross it here could mean stage direction wise, like cross to it, like you cross the stage. It could also mean making the sign of the cross, like as a thing of protection, up to the actor and director's interpretation. So this is Horatio talking to the ghost. If thou hast any sound or use of voice, speak to me. If there be any good thing to be done that may to thee do ease and grace to me, speak to me. If thou art privy to thy country's fate, which happily foreknowing may avoid, oh, speak. Or if thou hast uphoarded in thy life extorted treasure in the womb of earth, for which they say you spirits oft walk in death, speak of it. And then we have the cock crows, the rooster crows. Stay and speak, stop it, Marcellus. So stop it, meaning Marcellus, stop the ghost. I just picture Marcellus like pulling on his sleeve. He's like, stop it, Marcellus. That long list of things is like, why are you here? Is there something bad that happened to you in life that we can fix? Like, is there an injustice? If so, tell me. Do you know something that's going to happen to our country? If so, tell me. Did you hide a bunch of treasure, as I hear you ghost, do? Sometimes people have a bunch of treasure and then they die, so they're ghost wanderers, I guess. I don't know. Tell me about that too. Horatio's like, well, if there's money involved, I'll take it. But basically, he's just trying to theorize why the ghost is there. But it starts to leave as soon as it hears the rooster. Marcellus says, shall I strike it with my partisan, which is like a weapon? Do if it will not stand. 'Tis here, 'tis gone. And these lines are really quick, like boom, 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 as there's like chaos on the stage as the ghost exits. We do it wrong, being so majestical to offer it the show of violence, for it is as the air invulnerable, and our vain blows malicious mockery. So there's no point in striking at it because it's like the air. We're not going to hurt it. It was about to speak when the cock crowed, is how we'd say it. And then it started like a guilty thing upon a fearful summons. It's a famous line, guilty thing upon a fearful summons. So it looked scared, basically, like it had done something and got caught when it hears the rooster crow. I have heard the cock that is the trumpet to the morn doth with his lofty and shrill sounding throat awake the god of day. And at his warning, whether in sea or fire, in earth or air, the extravagant and erring spirit hies to his confine, and the truth therein, this present object made probation. So basically what Horatio, I believe that's Horatio talking, yes? Yeah, what Horatio is saying is, I've heard that when a rooster crows, signaling that it's going to be morning, the spirit, the ghost has to, no matter where it is, has to run away as fast as it can to avoid the light. So they're establishing like the rules of the supernatural here. It faded on the crowing of the cock. Some say that ever against that season comes wherein our Savior's birth is celebrated. Christmas time, right? This bird of dawning singeth all night long. And then they say no spirit dare stir abroad. The nights are wholesome, and no planets strike, no fairy takes, nor witch hath power to charm, so hallowed and so gracious is that time. So they're talking about very holy times of the year where evil spirits have no power, where they don't show up. So have I heard, and do in part believe it. But look, the morn in russet mantle clad walks o'er the dew of yon high eastward hill. Break we our watch up, and by my advice let us impart that what we have seen tonight unto young Hamlet. For, upon my life, this spirit dumb to us will speak to him. Do you consent? We shall acquaint him with it, as needful in our loves, fitting our duty. Let's do it, I pray. And I this morning know where we shall find him most convenient. So the most important part of this scene, arguably, in my opinion, the most important part of this scene, other than, hey, a ghost appeared, is what are they going to do with the ghost? Because Shakespeare grabs your attention with the appearance of the ghost, but he makes you lean in and be interested by making the ghost not speak. like, it's interesting to have a ghost. It's brilliant to have it be a silent ghost. And they need to figure out why this ghost is here. And they believe the best way to do that is to go tell Hamlet, who is the Prince of Denmark, right? According to the title. Well, he is, that's the title of the play, Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. Go tell Hamlet that they've seen the ghost of his father, the former king of Denmark, and they want him to talk to it, see what he makes of it. So that's why people will sometimes describe the ghost as the engine of the play. It's what moves, it sets everything in motion, it moves everything. Now, the other thing I'll say is that Hamlet is a long play, as we've already talked about. It's like 5 hours. If you do the whole thing without cutting a word, it's like 5 hours. So very few people ever do that, except Kenneth Branagh for film in the 90s. So quite often you're almost cutting down any Shakespeare play you perform. And probably when Shakespeare performed them, they would have been even trimmed down or shorter. We don't know exactly, but we suspect it. And there's other versions of these plays, like bad quartos and stuff floating around, that are shorter, of Hamlet specifically, of course. Oftentimes, almost always, you're trimming lines down. And a lot of lines in this scene would have been trimmed. A lot of that historical context, that history lesson, that geopolitical theorizing, a lot of that isn't all that necessary, or at least not in as much detail. The rules of the spirits and the thing about the rooster, you don't need to know all of that. So if you were confused by it, don't worry, because in scene 2, we go from all this general context to the specifics of what's happening. We go from political matters to family matters. And that's much more interesting. That's what people, cherish this play for and hold it in such high respect and high regard for, is that stuff. So this is a great opening scene, but it is a little slow at times. So if you got through reading it, excellent. The play just continues to pick up from here, especially now that the ghost has appeared. We're going to meet a bunch of new characters, including our titular character, Hamlet, the one who's alive, Hamlet Jr. here. And we're going to start off with being in the palace. Now, I'm just going to explain the characters before we go. We have the king, and that is Claudius, and he is married to Gertrude, who would be the queen then. We're going to figure out some interesting details about their relationship in this scene. Now, the head of Claudius's council, like his wisest person, his chief advisor, is Polonius. And Polonius's son is Laertes. Hamlet is there as well. We'll learn a whole lot more about Hamlet. And then there's a couple other characters who will kind of come and go, but those are our main characters to focus on here. So Claudius is the king, Gertrude is the queen, Polonius is the head advisor, and his son is Laertes. And then, of course, Hamlet. Okay, we start with King Claudius, who says, "Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, the memory be green, and that it us be fitted to bear our hearts in grief, and our whole kingdom to be contracted in one brow of woe. Yet so far hath discretion fought with nature, that we with wisest sorrow think on him together with remembrance of ourselves." But you can see right from the beginning, first line that he says, that Hamlet, who is dead, the former king, was his brother. Some of you are already aware of how weird this is, but it'll become very clear in the next sentence if you're not. So that was his brother. Now he's the king. And basically he says the memory is green and the memory is fresh. And we are all grieving about it, the whole kingdom. Yet so far hath discretion fought with nature. And nature is a huge theme in this play. Like the word nature comes up all the time. What is natural and what goes along with nature. So it's natural to be sorrowful, but there's a discretion fighting that. And with wisest sorrow, we think not just on the person who passed away, but also ourselves. So this is a very political way, roundabout way to say that while we are very sad about him dying, we are also doing something for ourselves here. And here we figured out in the next sentence where he says, "Therefore, our sometime sister, now our queen, the imperial jointress to this warlike state, have we, as 'twere with a defeated joy." Actually, before I get into the list, let me just explain the crazy thing. Our sometime sister, now our queen, means kind of what it sounds like, that Claudius was the brother to Gertrude. Now, not blood brother, brother-in-law here, right? Because he was Hamlet's brother, but brother-in-law, right? Still has the word brother in it. So I feel like that should be a that should be grounds to not go through with the marriage if the word brother is at all involved with the person you are marrying. So Gertrude and Claudius are related through marriage, and now they are married. So sometimes sister-in-law, now our queen. And that's strange, right? The play will comment on whether or not that's ethical or moral or just how strange it is. But to a modern audience, it feels strange. And it did feel strange to them too, maybe not in the exact same way. But then he's going to get into this long list. So pay attention to the careful words that Claudius uses here to explain this funeral that just happened for his brother and wedding that just took place right after it, where he married his brother's widow. So he says, the imperial jointress to this warlike state, have we, as 'twere with a defeated joy, an auspicious and drooping eye, with mirth and funeral, with dirge and marriage, an equal scale weighing delight and dole, taken to wife. So that list of things, defeated joy, mirth and funeral. Mirth is like laughter, funeral, not a laughing matter usually. Dirge is like funeral music, dirge and marriage. All of that, these oxymoronic combinations. And what he's trying to explain is that there's the sadness of the funeral and the joy of the wedding happening at the same time. It's like Claudius is saying the thing out loud. He's like, yes, this is strange, but it happened. And Gertrude was all for it, and I'm not hiding anything, right? This isn't an affair that's taking place or something happening behind closed doors. It's way out in the open here. And he's acknowledging that it is a strange combination of emotions, and yet it's happened. And now Claudius is king because he married the queen. So taken to wife. Nor have we herein barred your better wisdoms, which yet have freely gone with this affair along. So that kind of goes along with what I was saying about doing it in the open as opposed to behind doors. For all our thanks now follows that you know. Now we're going to see a shift from family stuff to political stuff, to foreign affairs specifically. He says, young Fortinbras, holding a weak supposal of our worth, or thinking by our late dear brother's death our state to be disjoint and out of frame, colleagued with this dream of his advantage, he hath not failed to pester us with message importuning the surrender of those lands lost by his father, with all bonds of law, to our most valiant brother. So much for him. So that is the foreign issue going on, like the international issue going on, is that young Fortinbras, who is the son of the person that we talked about in the previous scene, Hamlet Sr. killed Fortinbras Sr., and was given or won a bunch of land because of it. Now Fortinbras's son, young Fortinbras, wants that land back. And what Claudius says is that, you know, when Hamlet died, there may have been suspicion or whispers abroad that the kingdom was in a weakened state. And he is assuring people that it is not weak because he is there now. And a lot of people back then would have seen a kingdom without a king been in a weakened state, right? Queen Elizabeth had a lot to prove when she took the throne during Shakespeare's time in England. Now for ourself, and you'll notice that Claudius, because he is the king, refers to himself in second person all the time. He says we or ourself because he is Claudius, but he is also Denmark itself because he represents them or rules them. Now for ourself and for this time of meeting, thus much the business is, we have here writ to Norway, uncle of young Fortinbras, who impotent and bedridden scarcely hears of this his nephew's purpose, to suppress his further gait herein, in that the levies, the lists, and the full proportions are all made out of his subject. And we here dispatch you, good Cornelius, and you, Voltimand, for bearers of this greeting to old Norway, giving to you no further personal power to business with the king more than the scope of these dilated articles allow. So Cornelius and Voltimand are ambassadors to Norway. And basically he's like, here's letters that you need to take to the king of Norway. Now the king of Norway is just referred to as Norway. And what Claudius tells us is that the king of Norway is bedridden, that he is not all there, like he's old and bedridden. So he's not pulling the strings. People are pulling the strings behind his back, specifically his nephew. Claudius points out that, what is the line? Gate therein, and this is line 31, in the levies, the lists and full proportions are all made out of his subject, right? Like he is taking Norway's citizens and moving them into the army, moving them into a military space, which is not the thing that the prince does or the nephew to the king does. So Claudius's solution is to tell the real king of Norway what's going on so that he can put young Fortinbras in his place and put an end to these aggressive actions that seem to suggest war might be on the horizon between Norway and Denmark. What's more interesting for someone who knows the play, so you might want to mark this and come back to it if you haven't read it before, is that we see an uncle on the throne of Norway, just like there's an uncle on the throne of Denmark. Hamlet Sr. dies. Hamlet Jr. is not king. Why is he not king? Well, maybe he's too young, but they would have had younger kings. Maybe Gertrude could have ruled. But whatever would have happened didn't, because Claudius married Gertrude. So Hamlet Jr. is not on the throne. And in Norway, Fortinbras dies. Young Fortinbras is not on the throne. It is his uncle. So the throne went to the brother, not to the son. So you see a very similar setup, and Shakespeare in Hamlet specifically has a lot of characters who have parallel storylines and they crisscross. It's one of the things that makes this play so good. The other thing that's very, very interesting is that we have a theme here where the young character, Fortinbras, is trying to avenge his father. Fortinbras being his father who died. That we have a young man who is not on the throne trying to avenge the former king who is also his father. And that is, it'll make a lot of sense soon if it doesn't already to you. Anyway, so farewell and let your haste command your duty. Both of them say, in that and all things will we show our duty. We doubt it nothing. Heartily farewell. So they exit, and now we're going to shift from the foreign stuff, the international stuff, right back to the domestic. And this is where the play is so much more interesting. There's an argument to be made that the kings and the rulers in this play should be paying way more attention to the international, but it's the domestic that's more interesting, right? It's keeping up with the Kardashians is more interesting to watch than geopolitical news for some people. And if other people are like, no, it's not, this is probably because we're prideful, right? I mean, there's like drama to be had on a personal level. It tends to be more engaging. And Shakespeare gets right into that personal drama here, where he says, we doubt it nothing, heartily farewell. Sorry. And now Laertes, what's the news with you? Now Laertes is Polonius's son. So this would be the son of the king's main advisor. What's the news with you? You told us of some suit. What is it, Laertes? You cannot speak of reason to the Dane and lose your voice. What wouldst thou beg, Laertes? That shall not be my offer, not thy asking. The head is not more native to the heart, the hand more instrumental to the mouth, than is the throne of Denmark to thy father. What wouldst thou have, Laertes? So what we see there is the king says, what was it you wanted, Laertes? And Laertes doesn't respond. So he asks him like 4 times. And he even is like, you know that we care about your father, like he's part of the family, he's part of the body of the royal court, so you can ask things. But it shows that, you know, when you're talking to a king, even a brand new one like Claudius, you would be nervous. And you have to choose your words very carefully. And Laertes is afraid to ask for this favor. He finally musters up the courage and says, my dear lord, your leave and favor to return to France, from whence, though willingly I came to Denmark to show my duty in your coronation. So I came here to see you be crowned king. Yet now I must confess that duty done, my thoughts and wishes bend again toward France and bow them to your gracious leave and pardon. So Laertes wants to go back to France. And specifically, he wants to go back there because he's like studying in France. So he wants to go back to school, which is in France. Important thing to remember for a few lines from now. Have you your father's leave? What says Polonius? Hath my lord wrung from me my slow leave by laborsome petition, and at last upon his will I sealed my hard consent. I do beseech you, give him leave to go. So Polonius is like, yeah, he wore me down with asking, and he has my permission to go back. Take thy fair hour, Laertes. Time be thine, and thy best graces spend it at thy will. So mark this answer. He says, yes, Laertes, you can go. Your time is your own. Go back to France. Go back to college, man. Have fun. But now my cousin Hamlet and my son. So he says cousin and son. Now he is not Hamlet. You might be like, what is up with this family tree? He is not Hamlet's cousin. Cousin back then just meant relative or kinsman. So you could call a lot of people your cousin who weren't specifically the child of your parent's sibling. I had to think of what a cousin was for a second. So nowadays, we have a specific group of family members that are cousins. Back then, it was a looser term. But he does say son. His dad just died, and he's calling Hamlet his son. And Hamlet says in aside, this is not to Claudius, this is just to us. His first line in the play is to us, not to the court. I think that's interesting. He says, a little more than kin and less than kind. That's a confusing line, but it means more than kin is twice related. I am both your nephew and your son. And less than kind, less than a natural relationship there. So we're double related, and it's weird, is what that means. How is it that the clouds still hang on you? Not so, my lord, I am too much in the sun. So there you see him punning on the word sun. And Claudius is being very poetic when he says the clouds hang on you. Why are you still so sad? Why are you so depressed? And Gertrude, his mother, says to him, good Hamlet, cast thy nighted color off, and let thine eye look like a friend on Denmark, which would be her husband. Do not forever with thy veiled lids seek for thy noble father in the dust. Thou knowest 'tis common, which means natural. All that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. So she is saying, you can't be sad about your father forever. Everyone dies. It's what happens. I means yes, in case you didn't know, AY means yes. I, madam, it is common. If it be, why seems it so particular with thee? And Hamlet's going to latch onto the word seems there that Gertrude says. Why does it seem so specific with you? That's what she means, particular. If everyone experiences loss and everyone knows that everyone is going to die eventually, why are you taking this loss so hard? That's a crazy thing to say to someone who just lost a parent, especially your son. And Hamlet says, seems, madam, nay, it is. I know not seems. 'Tis not alone my inky cloak, good mother, nor customary suits of solemn black, nor windy superstition of forced breath, no, nor the fruitful river in the eye, nor the dejected haver of the visage, together with all forms, mood, shapes of grief that can denote me truly. These indeed seem. So what he's saying there is it's not that I seem depressed about this and sad about this. I am. And he gives a long list of things that people can do that seem like they are sad. The wearing black for mourning, crying, the solemn sighs of their breath, dejected haver of the visage would be looking downtrodden in your face, visage meaning face there. These indeed seem, for they are actions that a man might play. Shakespeare talking about acting, always interesting. That's a huge theme in this play. It's very important to be able to act while acting in this play. Characters who are better actors in Shakespeare usually have more power in Shakespeare. But I have that within which passes show, these but the trappings and the suits of woe. So I have within me things that can't be faked. I actually feel bad. And this feels to me very pointed toward the other generation, the older generation in the room. His mother and his uncle. Like, I'm actually sad, Hamlet. Other people, I won't say who they are, but other people just seem sad. Now, why might he question Gertrude and Claudius's true grief? Well, because they just got married, right? So how upset are you about dad dying if you are getting married to his brother right now? Seems like a fair question to ask. He doesn't say it as directly as I just paraphrased it because he can't, right? He is in court. This is the king and queen. You can't say exactly what's on your mind, even if you're the prince. Claudius says, "'Tis sweet and commendable in your nature, Hamlet, to give these mourning duties to your father." So that's a compliment, right? Like this is what you should do. But you must know your father lost a father. That father lost his. And the survivor, bound in filial obligation for some term to do obsequious sorrow. So he says you have to remember everyone loses their father. Generations of people lose their fathers. And there's a filial obligation. There's a family obligation to do obsequious sorrow is the term. So obsequies and is a mourning period. It's like it's not prayers. Oh, I probably have a note. Dutiful funeral service. So you have to, do your duty and go to the funeral and be sad for a while, seem sad if you're not, right? Like you do the right thing. But here's where he's going to warn Hamlet about the danger of this grief. But to persevere in obstinate condolement is a course of impious stubbornness. So obstinate condolement means never being able to feel better. It's being too stubborn. 'Tis unmanly grief. And right there in that short sentence, if that's the only thing the audience or reader understands, you get the point that Claudius is making. It says you're not being a man by acting this way. It shows a will most incorrect to heaven, a heart unfortified, a mind impatient, and understanding simple and unschooled. For what we know must be and is as common as any the most vulgar thing to sense. Why should we, in our peevish opposition, take it to heart? So like, he kind of says you're going against heaven, you're going against God even here. You know this is true. Why are you taking it so personally? 'Tis a fault to heaven, a fault against the dead, a fault to nature, to reason, most abused, whose common theme is death of fathers, and who still hath cried from the first course means corpse, till that he that died today, this must be so. So he says the theme of nature is that fathers die. And that's true. It's terribly sad, but it is true. We all know that eventually we're going to lose people in our lives, and we ourselves are mortal. And he says you're taking it too personally. You have to move on from this. It's this really interesting philosophical debate about grief. Shakespeare's time, they would have been way more familiar with the churchyard than most people are nowadays. People didn't necessarily survive those early stages of life. And if they did, they were still in a cruel, pre-modern medicine, violent world. So they would have known death quite personally. And in a modern world, you might be insulated from that a little bit longer. But we all still know it. We all know it in the back of our mind. Now, because they were more familiar with death on average, did they not take it personally? No, I don't think so. I think this play proves that. Hamlet proves that. Any of us reading, I think, can feel, okay, technically what Claudius is saying makes sense, but emotionally, it doesn't, right? We would side with Hamlet, I think, in understanding his grief over his father's death, especially if it seems like everyone else is moving on so quickly. So we pray you, throw to earth this unprevailing woe, and think of us as of a father. For let the world take note, you are the most immediate to our throne, and with no less nobility of love than that which dearest father bears his son, I do impart toward you. So he is saying there, think of us as your father, and I want the whole world to realize right now that you are the next in line for the throne. So just throwing that out there. Everyone in the room knows right now that you're in line for the throne. So if you're worried about that, don't be. As soon as I die, the throne is yours. And with no less nobility of love than that which dearest father bears his son, do I impart toward you. Now the monologue shifts again, and he's going to change the topic. He says, for your intent in going back to school in Wittenberg, so that's where Hamlet goes to college, university is Wittenberg, right, in modern day Germany. It is most retrograde to our desire, and we beseech you, bend you to remain here in the cheer and comfort of our eye, our chiefest courtier, cousin, and our son. And then the queen says, let not thy mother lose her prayers, Hamlet. I pray thee, stay with us. Go not to Wittenberg. I shall in all my best obey you, madam. So remember what happened with Laertes? Laertes was allowed to go back to France, to go back to school. Hamlet wanted to go back to school. I'm sure after the wedding, he wanted nothing more than to get out of this place. But he was just told no. And maybe understandably, right? He's very sad. He is depressed. They want to keep him close, keep an eye on him. But they say, no, you stay here. And he says, I will obey. But this is going to make him even more upset because he's not getting what he wanted. He wanted to go back to his studies, go back to school. Anyone who's gone away to university, I think, knows that feeling of, hopefully knows that feeling and enjoyed it there of wanting to get back to that place. Not that you don't want to be home, but Hamlet definitely doesn't want to be home, and he wants to go back, and he's told he can't. And he's a prince. He probably wasn't told no that often in reality, but he's told here he can't go back. Why, 'tis a loving and a fair reply. Be as ourself in Denmark. Madam, come. This gentle and unforced accord of Hamlet sits smiling to my heart, and grace whereof no jocund health that Denmark drinks today, but the great cannon to the clouds shall tell, and the kings rouse, and heaven shall bruit again, re-speaking earthly thunder, come away. So they're going to shoot off cannons to celebrate that Hamlet is staying. And then everyone leaves the stage except Hamlet, and Hamlet gets his first soliloquy. A lot of people have said that you can break Hamlet as a play down into Hamlet's 6 soliloquies, his 6 big speeches where he's the only one on stage. And this is the first one. They're all famous. One of them is very famous. You've heard of it, I'm sure. But this one is also maybe even the second most famous. And they're all written amazingly well. The whole play is written pretty well, but the soliloquies in particular are so powerful. Thing I would want to point out here, though, is that sometimes we think of a soliloquy as a character talking to the clouds, and they can from time to time, but oftentimes in Shakespeare, they are talking to the audience. And Hamlet definitely is addressing the audience. He can finally say what's on his mind. My wife describes soliloquies in Shakespeare as like those moments in reality TV shows where the person goes into that little room with the camera and they can actually say what's on their mind to the audience. It's similar like that. You can actually speak how you feel. And Hamlet is going to let us know right away how he feels. He says, oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. So that first sentence is wishing that his flesh would melt. Now, there's a couple different versions of Hamlet, and this is a famous line, so I want to point out there's 3 different ways of saying sullied, which is stained and defiled. The second quarto says sallied. I believe the first one says sullied, and the folio says solid. And that's the one I'm most used to hearing, oh, that this too solid flesh would melt. And there's, those are just different versions of Hamlet that exist from Shakespeare's time. Quartos are more like thin versions, acting versions kind of that have survived that maybe Shakespeare wrote, maybe someone like an actor remembered and tried to cobble together. Some of them are very different from each other. And the folio is after Shakespeare died, his friends took all his plays, put them together in one big collection, preserving the vast majority of them so that we can read them today, which is amazing. But yeah, when you are an editor of Shakespeare, like they are the Folger, you're going to be looking at all those versions to figure out exactly how you present things. So I'm sure this one mostly follows the folio, but here they've gone with a different one. So anyway, that's enough little technicalities on Shakespearean pronunciation. Back to the heart of the play here. He wishes that God did not make it sinful to take one's own life. O God, God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on it, ah, fie. 'Tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. So his description of the world is an unweeded garden, and the only thing that grows there are weeds, right? Things that are gross and disgusting, that choke out life, that the world is a terrible place and he wants to leave it. Now, You can play this as Hamlet being perfectly honest that this is where he is in this really troubled mental state. You can play it as Hamlet being just over dramatic language. Obviously, he's depressed. Obviously, he's sad. The level of that can vary according to the actor and director and the way that you take it. But the lines, however you take it, the lines are powerful. And the audience, I think, would take it seriously as a person who's in a really troubled spot. And he's going to explain to us some context for why this is all such a bad time for him to be in this world. He says, that it should come to this, but 2 months dead. Nay, not so much, not 2. So his father's been dead 2 months, and then he realizes, no, it hasn't even been 2 months yet since he died. That's wild, right? He died less than 2 months ago, and his wife and brother have gotten married in that time. So excellent a king that was to this Hyperion to a satyr. So Hyperion is the god of the sun, and a satyr is a little goat man. So he's comparing his father was like the sun god, and Claudius is basically a goat man. I think he's referring to Claudius there. I think you can play it a few different ways, but I'm pretty sure that's who he's referring to there. And now he's going to talk about his mom that was appearing to satyr, so loving to my mother, that he might not beteem the winds of heaven visit her face too roughly. So he wouldn't even let the wind blow on her too hard, right? Heaven and earth must I remember. Why, she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. And yet within a month, let me not think on it. Frailty, thy name is woman. So he's got a lot of issues with his mom. He says he realizes it hasn't even been a month, and how his mom just loved his dad so much, would hang on him, was always with him, as if being with him more made her want to be with him more. She never got sick of him. And now it's not even been a month. He says, frailty is a woman. Thy name is woman, right? Women are frail. They break their promises of love. That's an overreaction, in my opinion. I think he has an issue with Gertrude, not all women, but it's worth pointing out, especially for other things that happen in the play, that Hamlet doesn't say, frailty, thy name is Gertrude, or thy name is my mom. He says, thy name is women. A little month, or ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body, like Niobe all tears. So Niobe was a character in Greek mythology who, when she, does it say? Yeah, when she lost her children, could not stop crying, and she turned into like a fountain. So she would cry for all of eternity. So her shoes weren't even old that she wore to the funeral, where she cried for her husband's death, for Hamlet's father's death. Why, even she, oh God, a beast that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer. So an animal that doesn't even have the ability to reason would have spent a longer time mourning the loss of its partner than his mom did for his dad. Married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month. So now we've gone from less than 2 months to less than a month. So either Hamlet is remembering the details or he is exaggerating to us. You can play it different ways, but I seem to think he's remembering the details, and it just gets worse and worse the more he thinks about it. Within a month, ere yet the salt of most unrighteous tears had left the flushing in her galled eyes, she married. O most wicked speed, to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. It is not, nor it cannot come to good. That is a line. Oh my gosh. Whew. I mean, just saying it just sounds so venomous. O most wicked speed to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. But you think about it, to go so quickly and with such skill, right? Dexterity is what you have, like a surgeon has a dexterous set of hands because they do delicate work that's really, important. So with such speed and such skill to jump right into incestuous, that's a big word to use about your mom, incestuous sheets is yeah, you can see why Hamlet's going through so much. Now, the Folger edition has a big, long note on that line that says, in the 16th century, it was, especially because of King Henry VIII and his weird, freaky marriages. Well, he was weird and freaky, at least. That there was a lot of debate about whether or not it was truly incest if a woman married her dead husband's brother, right? Because technically they're not blood related, but like we said earlier, they are related. And the Bible, which is what they would have used to judge, a lot of their moral decisions, isn't clear on this issue. I don't know if that was the most important thing in the Bible to explain that. So it was highly debated. Some people thought it was okay. Some people didn't. Man, that was a wild thing to debate with like your neighbor about, I guess. Nowadays, I would say that most people are going to side with Hamlet and seeing this as really, really weird. Not everyone thought that way back then, which is worth noting historically. But for Hamlet, he does not like it. But break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. And that's because people are entering the stage. So Hamlet, this is why I say he's talking to us. He says to us, I can't talk anymore. I can't say how I feel now because more people are coming. But he's happy because it's his friends. Horatio says, "Hail to your lordship. I am glad to see you well. Horatio, or do I forget myself? The same, my lord, and your poor servant ever. Sir, my good friend, I'll change that name with you. And what makes you from Wittenberg, Horatio?" Marcellus. "Good, my lord. I'm very glad to see you." To Bernardo. "Good, even sir. But what, in faith, make you from Wittenberg?" So, interesting things to pick up there. Horatio is from Wittenberg. That's where Hamlet is studying. So they know each other from school. He knows Bernardo and Marcellus, I assume, from Denmark. But he knows Horatio as a classmate in college. There's this interesting moment where Horatio says, "It is I, Horatio, your servant." And Hamlet says, "No, a friend. I would change that name." And Hamlet's a prince. Everyone, except for like the king and queen, are a servant to him. Everyone's his servant in this country. But he says to Horatio, "No, you are my friend, not my servant." That's a big deal. That's a big deal. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts on the Horatio-Hamlet relationship, but however you play it, they're good friends. And you don't always find that in literature. Tend not to focus on friendship in the like canon of literature, I feel. And here you see that Horatio and Hamlet are good friends. "But Faith, what make you from Wittenberg?" So why are you not at Wittenberg? "A truant disposition, good my lord." So he says, me, always skipping classes. "I would not hear your enemy say so, nor shall you do my ear that violence to make it trustier of your own report against yourself. I know you are no truant." So he's like, "Okay, yeah, I know you. You don't skip classes." And we know Horatio's thought of as very intelligent. That's why they brought him to see the ghost, to prove that he wasn't as smart as he thought he was, but also he's very scholarly, so maybe he could figure it out. "I know you are no truant, but what is your affair in Elsinore? We'll teach you to drink deep ere you depart." Meaning like we'll drink lots of beer before you leave. "My lord, I came to see your father's funeral." "I prithee, do not mock me, fellow student." "I think it was to see my mother's wedding." So that's a bit of a quick humored, a little bit of a joke. Hamlet laughing at how ridiculous this is. He's like, "Oh, you were here for my dad's funeral. Now I think you're here for my mom's wedding." "Indeed, my lord, it followed hard upon," meaning quickly upon. Thrift, Horatio, the funeral baked meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables. Would I had met my dearest foe in heaven, or ever I had seen that day, Horatio. My father, methinks I see my father." "Where, my lord?" "In my mind's eye, Horatio." So I think that's kind of funny because Hamlet is able to speak his mind to an extent with Horatio, and complain about how messed up this whole wedding funeral thing was. And he's thinking about his father and he says, "I see my father." And Horatio's like, where? Right. Because they just saw his father as a ghost. So like, "Oh my gosh, the ghost is back." He's like, in my mind's eye, right? Like my imagination. "I saw him once. He was a goodly king. He was a man. Take him for all in all. I shall not look upon his like again. My lord, I think I saw him yesternight." "Saw who?" "My lord, the king your father." "The king my father?" So that's the big moment for Hamlet. Horatio, who's no idiot, says, "Yeah, I think I saw your dad last night." His dad's been dead for almost a month, according to the monologue before this. So this is a big, big moment. "Season your admiration for a while," so like put it on hold. "With an intent ear till I may deliver upon the witness of these gentlemen this marvel to you. For God's love, let me hear. 2 nights together. So Horatio is going to summarize some of the stuff that's happened. This is mostly stuff we've already seen, but in case you were confused in scene 1, now you'll get to catch up with Hamlet. 2 nights together had these gentlemen, Marcellus and Bernardo, on their watch in the dead waste and middle of the night, been thus encountered. A figure like your father, armed at point exactly, cap a pie, which means at every point, like head to toe, appears before them, and with solemn march goes slow and stately by them. Thrice he walks by their oppressed and fear-surprised eyes with his truncheon's length, which is his staff, like his royal staff, whilst they, distilled almost to jelly with the act of fear, stand dumb and speak not to him. This to me in dreadful secrecy in part they did, and I with them the 3rd night kept the watch, whereas they had delivered, both in time, form of the thing, each word made true and good. The apparition comes. I knew your father. These hands are not more like. But where was this? So he's like, I know your father. I know that was, I've seen your father alive. I know that was him. That the ghost looked like, that was your father's ghost. But where was this? My lord, upon the platform where we watch. Did you not speak to it? My lord, I did, but answer made it none. Yet once methought it lifted up its head and did address itself to motion like as it would speak. But even then the morning cock crew loud, and at the sound it shrunk in haste away and vanished from our sight. 'Tis very strange. As I do live, my honored lord, 'tis true. And we did think it writ down in our duty to let you know of it. So you see Hamlet say 'tis very strange, like he doesn't fully believe it. And why you're mourning the loss of your father, it must seem so hopeful that you could talk to him again, that you could see him again. And Hamlet's not going to immediately believe this. He's guarding himself emotionally, but Horatio says it is true. Indeed, sirs, but this troubles me. Hold you the watch tonight? We do, my lord. Armed, say you, like the ghost was bearing arms? Armed, my lord. From top to toe. My lord, from head to foot. Then saw you not his face? Oh, yes, my lord. He wore his beaver up, so that refers to his visor on his helmet, so we could see his face. So it's interesting, Hamlet's asking questions, right? Like he was armed, like he was wearing armor, and you said it was head to toe, top, so you wouldn't have seen his face then. Like he's very analytical as a character, Hamlet. He's very good at testing his theories and his hypotheses. A countenance more in sorrow than in anger, pale or red, nay, very pale, and fixed his eyes upon you most constantly. I would I had been there. It would have much amazed you. Very like, stayed it long, while one with moderate haste might tell 100. That's such a crazy line. It means how a moderately hurried person would count to 100. Someone who is kind of in a hurry, how long it would take them to count to 100. That's how long the ghost stayed. And, you know, obviously there's like a minute and a half basically. And I read that line. I was like, I think I know what that means. But if you get confused reading this and I don't answer it, or you don't like the answer I give, I could be wrong. Lord knows I am sometimes. You look it up and see what other people have said about it. And I found an entire article on this kind of obscure line from Hamlet. That's how crazy studied this play is. People have written about every word of this play. So while it's an intimidating and difficult play to read in many ways, there's also a lot of resources out there, which is great. Longer. So they're like, no, it was longer than that. Not when I saw it. His beard was grizzled, no. It was as I have seen it in his life, a sable silvered, so a little silvered. I will watch tonight, perchance 'twill walk again. I warrant it will. If it assume my noble father's person, I'll speak to it, though hell itself should gape and bid me hold my peace. I pray you all, if you have hereto concealed this sight, let it be tenable in your silence still. So he's like, if you haven't told anyone but me, please don't tell anyone else. And whatsoever else shall hap tonight, give it an understanding, but no tongue. So let's think about what happens tonight, but not say anything to anyone. I will requite your loves, so fare you well. Upon the platform, twixt 11 and 12, I'll visit you. Our duty to your honor. Your loves as mine to you, farewell. So everyone leaves but Hamlet. This does not count as one of his soliloquies, but he is talking, just to the audience here. He says, my father's spirit in arms. So dad, but armed for war. All is not well. I doubt some foul play. Would the night were come. So basically, like, I wish it was nighttime already. Till then, sit still, my soul. Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelm them to men's eyes. Which means, hard to say, Hamlet is thought of as one of the most difficult roles to play for a reason. Not just for how many lines there are, but also for the way he talks. But what it means is basically what happens in the dark will be brought to the light. What is concealed will be made relevant. And the play is set in motion. That's why the ghost is the engine of the play. Scene 1, we need to tell Hamlet about the ghost. Scene 2, we need to go see the ghost. And we're not going to see that in scene 3. We're going to meet some other very important characters in scene 3. But hopefully you can see where the plot is going. And if you can follow that, no matter how many confusing lines there are, you'll be able to follow the play in general. So in this scene, we meet a new character, and she's quite an important character in this play. So that character is Ophelia. Ophelia is the sister to Laertes, so she's the daughter to Polonius, and we'll figure out how she's connected to some other important characters in this scene as well. So it begins with the brother and sister Laertes and Ophelia talking. This is at Polonius's house, or their house too, I guess. My necessaries are embarked. Farewell. And sister, as the winds give benefit and convey is assistant, do not sleep, but let me hear from you. So basically he's saying he's ready to leave, right? Laertes is going back to France, and that winds give benefit and convey is assistant means beneficial winds and boats. So like safe travels for not just him, but also, the mail, because he wants her to write to him. Do you doubt that? For Hamlet and the trifling of his favor, hold it a fashion and a toy in blood, a violet in the youth of primy nature, forward, not permanent, sweet, not lasting, the perfume and suppliance of a minute, no more. So that was a big subject change, right? Like, I'm ready to go, love you, write to me. And here's some advice about you and your boyfriend before I go. So if you couldn't tell from that, Ophelia is in a relationship, or at least a courtship, according to Laertes, with Hamlet. And the advice that Laertes gives to Ophelia is that she shouldn't put too much stock in it. She shouldn't get her heart too invested in this relationship. There's a bunch of examples that he gives, right? Forward, not permanent, sweet, not lasting. It'll be a minute and nothing more. Like, this is a fling. Don't invest your heart in it or get too wrapped up in it. No more but so. Think it no more. And then we get a huge monologue. And the Folger edition takes up pretty much the whole page. This is all Laertes lecturing his sister about why she should not be in a relationship with Hamlet. He says, for nature, crescent, does not grow alone in thews and bulk, but as this temple waxes, the inward service of the mind and soul grows wide withal. That's a confusing sentence, but basically he's using the moon as a way of explaining how when a person grows up, right? So we start with a crescent, and then it waxes. So it grows, right? As the moon gets bigger, so does a person. And what he says here is that they grow not just in size, right, in thews and bulk, but as this temple, as this body waxes, the inward service of the mind and soul grows wide withal. So as people grow up, their minds change, their souls change. They don't just get taller and stronger and all that stuff. They also change their mind about things. And what he is saying here is that as Hamlet matures and gets older, right? Hamlet's like pretty much the same age as him, maybe a little younger. But as he grows up, he will decide to not be with you. Perhaps he loves you now, and now no soil nor cautel doth besmirch the virtue of his will. But you must fear. His greatness weighed, his will is not his own, for he himself is subject to his birth. So here we get, he says, Hamlet may love you at this moment, but it won't last. And even if he wants it to last, it won't last, because he is subject to his birth. He is a prince, so he needs to marry royalty. That'll be the expectation. He'll marry someone to form an alliance or a treaty or something, not necessarily for love, and certainly not someone who isn't royalty. Now, Laertes and Ophelia would spend time in court because Polonius is the chief advisor to the court, but they're not royals. They are from a totally different social circle than Hamlet is. He may not, as unvalued persons do, carve for himself, for on his choice depends the safety and the health of the whole state. So carve there means choose. So he might not be able to choose. It's basically similar sentiment. He might not be able to choose for himself. He has to choose for the country, who he marries. And therefore must his choice be circumscribed unto the voice and yielding of that body whereof he is the head. So again, he has to choose because he is the prince. Then, if he says he loves you, it fits your wisdom so far to believe it, as he in his peculiar act and place may give his saying deed, which no further than the main voice of Denmark goes withal. That if he says he loves you, it fits your wisdom, so it'd be smart of you, so far to believe it, as he in his peculiar act and place may give his saying deed. So believe it to an extent, but know that things can change and will change when he has to marry someone. It won't be you. Then weigh what loss your honor may sustain, if with too credent ear you list his songs, or lose your heart or your chaste treasure open to his unmastered importunity. Whew. That's the thing to say. And he's weighing up what Ophelia will lose, right? If you are with this guy, what is that going to do to your reputation? What is that going to do if you give up your chastity to this person who will not love you in the long run? Fear it. I mean, look at this fear. Fear it, Ophelia, fear it, my dear sister, and keep you in the rear of your affection, out of the shot and danger of desire. So there we see warfare imagery, and the rear of your affection means in the back of the army. So keep your affection in the back lines, not the front lines, so that you are out of danger from the shot, right? Arrows, gunshots, cannons, and danger of desire. So this is very serious, according to Laertes. The chariest maid is prodigal enough if she unmask her beauty to the moon. So chariest is most careful. That's what that means. So maid here means an unmarried woman, like a maid of honor, not necessarily someone who cleans, that sort of maid. So the most careful unmarried woman is prodigal, right? The prodigal son in the Bible, someone who goes off and does sinful things and kind of betrays the family name and all that sort of stuff, is prodigal enough if she unmasks her beauty to the moon, meaning not even the moon should see the full figure of a maid, let alone a prince. Virtue itself scapes not calumnious strokes. The canker galls the infants of the spring too oft before their buttons be disclosed. That would be worms destroying flowers early in their life before they've grown up enough. The metaphor being Hamlet is the canker worm and your virginity is the flower. And in the morn and liquid dew of youth, contagious blastments are most imminent. So when you are young, you are most susceptible to sickness, contagion. Be wary then. Best safety lies in fear. Youth to itself rebels, though none else near. So Laertes is he talks for a long time, and Ophelia is just sitting there being talked to. But he is very leery of what he has heard about his sister and this prince and Hamlet. And he thinks she is in like mortal danger if she goes too far with this. And he's about to leave. He won't be there to police her actions or oversee her. So this is his final parting words to her before he leaves for France, is be careful in this relationship. So Ophelia has a good retort, though. She says, I shall the effect of this good lesson keep as watchmen to my heart. So, okay, I'll keep this in mind. But, good my brother, Do not, as some ungracious pastors do, show me the steep and thorny way to heaven, whiles like a puffed and reckless libertine himself the primrose path of dalliance treads, and recks not his own reed. So there she warns him about being a hypocrite. Do not be as some ungracious pastors, right? Preach about how to get to heaven, and yet they are, I love this, a puffed and reckless libertine, right? And then in their own actions, they are immoral. They do things they shouldn't be doing, and they take the primrose path of dalliance, which would be to hell, right? The primrose path. And recks not his own reed means does not heed his own advice. There's also a bit of a humorous pun in there in terms of Laertes warning Ophelia about sexual sin. The recks not his own reed as can refer to something else. You can figure it out. Laertes says, "Oh, fear me not." And then their father enters. Enter Polonius. "I stay too long, but here my father comes. A double blessing is a double grace. Occasion smiles upon a second leave." So the fact that he gets to see his dad for a second time and say, get his dad's blessing again. Yet here, so what that implies is that he said goodbye to his father, and then he went to go say goodbye to Ophelia, but he took so long lecturing Ophelia that Polonius just entered the room, and he's, "Oh, wow, you're still here. I thought you were leaving." "Yet here, Laertes, abroad, abroad for shame. The wind sits in the shoulder of your sail, and you are stayed for. There, my blessing with thee, and these few precepts in thy memory, look thou character." So he gives his blessing again. Sometimes performances he'll give money or something, or whatever symbolizes that blessing, or it could just be saying his blessing. But before he goes, he's got some precepts to give him to memorize for his character. This is Polonius's advice to Laertes. And it's a very long list. You'll hear a really famous line in this long list. But Polonius is legendarily long-winded. There's jokes in the play about how long-winded he is, and Laertes seems to take after him in this scene as well. But let's take a look at all the advice he gives Laertes. He says, "Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. Those friends thou hast, and their adoption tried, grapple them unto thy soul with hoops of steel. But do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new hatched, unfledged courage. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but, being in, bear that the oppressed may beware of thee. Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy, rich, not gaudy. For the appeal oft proclaims the man, and they in France of the best rank and station are of most select and generous chief in that. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry." So there's a long list there, and it's some pretty good advice for the most part. Be careful in doorways. Make sure that you give more people your ears than your voice. Listen more than you speak. Don't get in a fight, but if you're in a fight, make sure they realize you're in the fight. Dress as nice as you can, but don't be too fancy. Don't be gaudy, especially in France, right? They'll judge you for that. So we get all this advice, and you could go through it more carefully if you need to, if you're playing the role or going to use it for a research paper or something like that. But what I love about this monologue is that all you really need to know is this last thing he says. "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. Farewell, my blessing season this in thee." So that's the line I'm sure you've heard a version of before. "This above all, to thine own self be true." Be true to yourself. That is the thesis statement, the most important thing he says. Above everything else I said to you, make sure you are true to yourself. It's really good parting advice for someone. And I want you to just put a little pin in that and remember it for when we get to the conversation between Polonius and his daughter in just a little bit here. Most humbly do I take my leave, my lord. The time invites you. Go, your servants tend. Farewell, Ophelia, and remember well what I have said to you. 'Tis in my memory locked, and you yourself shall keep the key of it. Farewell. Laertes exits. Then Polonius says, what is it, Ophelia, he hath said to you? So like he's like, remember what I said to you? And she says, it is in my memory, and you yourself have, like, yes, it's just between us, right? That conversation is just between us. And right, they are like adult children or near adult children, right? You have conversations that are just you and your siblings sometimes. But Polonius, in addition to being long-winded, is very nosy, right? He's kind of the chief spy master for the court. That's how he's chief advisor, is he spies on people. We'll see throughout the play, there's layer upon layer of surveillance and overhearing and eavesdropping, all that stuff in the play. So Polonius does not respect that locking the conversation that Ophelia says to Laertes. As soon as Laertes is gone, he says, what was it he said to you? What was it, Ophelia, he hath said to you? So please you, something touching the Lord Hamlet. So she's honest, right? She doesn't disclose the whole speech, but it's about the Lord Hamlet. Mary, well bethought. 'Tis told me he hath very oft of late given private time to you, and you yourself have of your audience been most free and bounteous. So you guys have been hanging out together without anyone else around. If it be so, as so 'tis put on me, and that in a way of caution, I must tell you, you do not understand yourself so clearly as it behooves my daughter and your honor. What is it between you? Give me up the truth. So behooves means benefits, more powerful word of benefit for you. So Polonius already knows about some of this stuff with Hamlet, right? Because he's spying on everyone. He's got an army of spies with him. That's his job. So he already knows about it, and he says, tell me the truth of what is going on. He hath, my lord, of late made many tenders of his affection to me. Affection! You speak like a green girl, unsifted in such perilous circumstance. Do you believe his tenders, as you call them? So tenders would mean words of affection. And she barely gets to talk. I mean, doesn't have the stage direction of Polonius cutting her off, but I see it as him cutting her off, or at least she knows she better keep this as short as possible. Because he says, you speak like a green girl, someone who's not grown up, someone who's immature and gullible about the world. Do you believe his tenders, as you call them? I do not know, my lord, what I should think. So that's an interesting response. She says, I don't know. I don't know exactly what to think about it. Mary, I will teach you, think yourself a baby, that you have taken these tenders for true pay, which are not sterling. Tender yourself more dearly, or, not to crack the wind of the poor phrase, running it thus, you'll tender me a fool. So there we see punning on tender as money, right? It means affection, but it's also a form of money. And if something isn't sterling, then it's not genuine, right? Like sterling silver. So you're taking counterfeit money and acting like it's true. And you're going to make me seem like a fool if you don't shape up and learn from this. But to backtrack a little bit there, he says, I will teach you what to think, right? That's not, as a teacher, we're all about teaching you how to think, or we should be, not teaching you what to think. That's not education. That's, indoctrination or propaganda. So he goes and follows that with says, think yourself a baby. Now compare what he said to his son, which was be true to yourself, to thine own self be true. And here it is, think of yourself as a baby and I'll teach you what to think. Big difference. Now, would he perhaps have cautionary tales if Hamlet had a sister and Laertes was clairvoyanting, that's not the right word, gallivanting around the kingdom with her? Perhaps, probably not, because especially back then it was different with your daughter and your son, and some people still see it that way to this day. Certainly Polonius does. And he gives Ophelia very little room to explain herself or to form her own thoughts as she's trying to navigate this relationship. My lord, he hath importuned me with love in honorable fashion. So he said that he loves me. That's a big deal. And he's been honorable. I, fashion, you may call it. Go to, go to. So go to in Shakespeare means like talk more about it. But it's said in a way of like, I don't believe what you said. You see it a lot when characters are arguing, especially in like prose argument, where they'll say, go to, like give another example, or what's your next point? Because that one just doesn't cut it. So that's what he's saying there. He's like, oh, fashion, as you call it, go to. And hath given countenance to his speech, my lord, with almost all the holy vows of heaven. So again, she's talking about the gentlemanly way that Hamlet is carrying himself and the vows that he makes to heaven. He swears to heaven that he loves her. I, springes to catch woodcocks, which is traps to catch birds. I do know when the blood burns how prodigal the soul lends the tongue vows. So he says, I know that when a man has hormones, the blood burns, how prodigal the soul lends the tongue vows. That the prodigal, again, talking about, right, someone who's does the wrong thing, isn't true, runs off and lives a sinful existence. How the soul is prodigal and it will lend one's own tongue vows to say, like, I love you. I swear to God, I love you forever. I will marry you, or whatever. He'll say whatever it is you have to say to get what you want, is what Polonius is saying. These blazes, daughter, giving more light than heat, extinct in both even in their promise, as it is a making you must not take for fire. So these blazes, right, the burning blood, it is more light than heat. It is not true. You cannot mistake it for true fire. You can't believe what he is saying to you. From this time be something scanter of your maiden presence. Set your entertainments at a higher rate than a command to parley. For Lord Hamlet believes so much in him that he is young, and with a larger tether may he walk than may be given you. So basically he says, from now on, behave like you should as an unmarried woman, not being off alone with this guy, and know that Hamlet can get away with a lot more than you can. He has a longer tether, a longer leash, right, as we might say. In few, Ophelia, do not believe his vows, for they are brokers, not of that dye which their investments show, but mere implorators of unholy suits, breathing like sanctified and pious bawds to better to beguile. This, and I believe that is a long, they are panderers, go-betweeners, and sexual intrigues, who are not as holy as their dress would indicate. Instead, they are merely urgers of sinful actions, speaking as if they were holy in order to entice. Whew. Yeah, sometimes a good footnote is really helpful, which is why I like the Folger editions of the play. It's punning a lot on, or using metaphors on dress and how you can fake what you look like and all that sort of stuff. But it was a lot to unpack, so I just read that one verbatim. Hopefully it made sense to you. This is for all. I would not, in plain terms, from this time forth, have you so slander any moment leisure as to give words or talk with the Lord Hamlet. Look to it, I charge you, come your ways. So he lays down the law at the end, which says from now on, you should not be spending any time with him. Shouldn't be talking to him. Shouldn't be spending time alone with him. Make sure you listen to me. I shall obey, my lord, is all Ophelia says. And usually that is played as a sarcastic delivery. Because how could you not be, right? I mean, look at Ophelia here. She thinks she's in love. She does not fully understand the relationship. She's not saying, oh, we're going to get married. Oh, I love this man so much. She says, I do not know what to think about this. And here her brother comes in and gives that whole monologue about how she should behave and her love life and how she shouldn't trust this guy. And then her father comes in and goes even further with it. So both men in her life really telling her she can't trust herself and she just needs to listen to them or she's going to be in danger. And that wraps up 1-3. So we've met the majority of the major characters. So there's some other ones that come in, but now that we've met Ophelia, most of the major characters have already been introduced. Hello and welcome to a reading and analysis of William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Today we are talking about Act 1, Scene 4. So this is one of the shortest scenes in the play, but it does have a pretty complicated monologue in it. And in fact, there's a few lines in this monologue that scholars still can't agree on what exactly they mean. So we'll do our best to try and figure it out and see what happens next in this play. So in 1-4, we are back to Hamlet, Horatio, and Marcellus. So we were just with Polonius and his children, and now we are back to the ghost hunters in the play, right? So they're outside here, and our first line tells us this. Hamlet says, "The air bites shrewdly, it is very cold. It is a nipping and an eager air. What hour now? I think it lacks of 12. No, it is struck. Indeed, I heard it not." So the characters are establishing our setting. Of course, in most modern theaters, you have the ability to quickly change lights and even scenery and that sort of stuff. In Shakespeare's time, outdoor at the Globe, they would not have that ability. They'd be performing during daylight hours, so you could actually see what's happening. And the characters' lines would tell the audience what sort of setting they were in, time of day, temperature, all that sort of stuff. It then draws near the season wherein the spirit held his wont to walk. So the time when the ghost usually appears. A flourish of trumpets and 2 pieces go off. That would be like gunfire, or the pieces or cannons. "What does this mean, my lord?" asks Horatio. "The king doth wake tonight, and takes his rouse, keeps waysail, and the swaggering uprising reels. And, as he drains his draughts of Rhenish down, the kettle drum and trumpet thus bray out the triumph of his pledge." So the king, it says the king wakes. That's disturbing if that's true. Maybe what it means is the king stays awake to drink. Basically, he's partying. It'd be very, I mean, it's probably problematic as is, but very problematic if he has like an alarm to wake up to go drink wine. But that's what it's saying, right? His triumph of his pledge is to drink all of this wine in a single gulp. So he's like frat boying it up as the king. So that's Claudius, right? "Is it a custom? Aye, marry, it is." So does this happen often, right? Or is it part of court culture? "But to my mind, though I am native here, and to the manner born, it is a custom more honored in the breach than the observance." So this is all talking about the drinking, the custom of drinking, and how much drinking is happening there. He says, "This heavy-headed revel, east and west, makes us traduced and taxed of other nations." So they're judged. Traduced there means to have your reputation kind of dragged through the mud. So other nations speak poorly of them for what they do, for how much they drink. "They clep us drunkards," clep meaning call us, "drunkards, and with swinish phrase soil our edition." So soil our edition means ruin our titles. So mock the titles of noble and prince and king, because they're not seen as nobles, princes, and kings abroad. They're seen as drunkards. I don't know if when this play was written, an English audience had the perception of Danish people as being heavy drinkers. I'm not sure where Shakespeare's going with this, but it's interesting that there's a lot of alcohol in this play. And here Hamlet is condemning it, right? He did say to Horatio, "We'll teach you to drink deep ere you depart," in 1-2. So maybe a little hypocritical. But anyway, "And indeed, it takes from our achievements, though performed at height, the pith and marrow of our attribute." So pith and marrow is the essence, and attribute is your reputation. So no matter what you do, you're seen for this vice of drunkenness. "So oft it chances in particular men that for some vicious mole of nature," which is a natural fault, something you're born with that is a fault against you, "that for some vicious mole of nature in them, as in their birth, wherein they are not guilty, since nature cannot choose his origin, by the overgrowth of some complexion." So overgrowth of some complexion is and the Folger's really helping me out here. It says, the increase of one of four humors, which were thought to control man's physical and emotional being. So that was what they thought made up the human body, and it led to some interesting medical practices, like you had too much bad blood in you or something, so they'd use leeches or bloodletting. So the idea is that the fault can throw off your balance here. And it could be a fault that you're born with. And as he says, you're not guilty of that, since nature cannot choose its origin. Worth noting, nature, huge theme in this play as well. Not just like nature, like plants and animals, but talk of nature, what is natural, the natural order of things. Or by some habit that too much over-leavens the form of plausive, that means pleasing, manners, that these men carrying, I say, the stamp of one defect, being nature's livery or fortune's star. So this defect either comes from birth or from luck. His virtues else, be they as pure as grace, as infinite as man may undergo, shall, in the general censure, take corruption from that particular fault. So basically, it overshadows all the good things about you. No matter what is good about you, this fault, you could see it as original sin. You could see it as genetic disposition. But the things you are born with, the things that happen to you, can overshadow the things that you are in control of. That was confusing as is. Here's the lines that people still aren't sure on. He says, from that particular fault, the dram of evil doth all the noble substance of a doubt to his own scandal. So the Folger says, these difficult lines have never been satisfactorily repaired, but the general sense may be that a small amount of evil makes even something admirable seem disreputable. There we go. And I agree with that interpretation. It seems like what they're saying is a small amount of something bad throws off the whole thing. That seems to be in line with the whole monologue. Now, Hamlet's long-winded. He could go on forever with his philosophical thoughts on human nature, but he is interrupted because the ghost enters. Horatio says, look, my lord, it comes. Angels and ministers of grace defend us. That's the thing Hamlet says the first time he sees the ghost. For those of you who are theatrical practitioners and work in the theater, you might have heard that this line is sometimes used as the reverse curse if someone says Macbeth in a theater. So in the theater, people usually say Mackers or the Scottish play, as opposed to saying Macbeth, unless you're performing Macbeth. And there's a whole long history to it. You can watch my Macbeth series if you're more interested in it. But I find it interesting with Hamlet here that sometimes people say angels and ministers of grace defend us after someone has said Macbeth in the theater. So I think most people just do it kind of for fun and tradition, but for those who are superstitious, they take it seriously. And you can see why they picked this line. It's Hamlet seen startled by a ghost, and he is not running to his dad and embracing him, right? We know he loved his father. We know he's very, very, very sad about his father's death, but he does not run to this ghost. Look what he says instead. He says, be thou a spirit of health or goblin damned. Bring with thee airs from heaven or blasts from hell. Be thy intents wicked or charitable. Thou comest in such questionable shape that I will speak to thee. I'll call thee Hamlet, king, father, royal Dane. Oh, answer me. So it shows the stakes here. Hamlet doesn't trust that this spirit is good right away. He's wondering if it's from heaven or if it's from hell. Is this a spirit here to bring good news, to set the natural order in the right way, or is it trying to trick them and lead them to destruction? He says he'll call it Hamlet, king, father, royal Dane, but all of those are in quotation marks, right? He's calling it because it looks like it. He doesn't necessarily believe that it is his father yet. Oh, answer me. Notice that the ghost does not answer yet. Let me not burst in ignorance, but tell why thy canonized bones, hearsed in death, have burst their cerements, why the sepulchre, wherein we saw thee quietly interred, hath oped his ponderous and marble jaws to cast thee up again. So all of that is talk of the churchyard, the graveyard, and how the last rites were done for Hamlet's the canonized bones. The last rites were done for Hamlet Sr. He was buried in the churchyard. His soul, his spirit should be at rest. And yet here it is wandering, dressed for battle in the middle of the night. What may this mean that thou, dead corse means corpse, right? Dead corse, again in complete steel, revisits thus the glimpses of the moon, making night hideous, and we fools of nature so horridly to shake our disposition with thoughts beyond the reaches of our souls. Say, why is this? Wherefore? What should we do? We fools of nature is a famous line from Hamlet. You'll hear me say that quite a bit because almost every line in this play is a famous line because it's the most famous play in the English-speaking world. What does it mean exactly? The Folger helps us out and says, causing us weak humans, so fools means weak here, to agitate our minds with thoughts that go beyond that even our souls can reach to. So they can't understand the afterlife because they are alive. They have not experienced it yet. So they're weak to that. They are fools in their ignorance to it. The ghost beckons, meaning like motions for Hamlet to follow him. It beckons you to go away with it as if it some impartment did desire to you alone. Look with what courteous action it waves you to a more removed ground, but do not go with it. No, by no means. So both people, Marcellus and Horatio, urge Hamlet to not go with the ghost. Hamlet says, it will not speak. Then I will follow it. So he does decide to follow it because he needs to talk to it. Do not, my lord. Why? What should be the fear? I do not set my life at a pin's fee. So pin's fee is the cost of a pin. And for my soul, what can it do to that? Being a thing immortal as itself, it waves me forth again. I'll follow it. So Hamlet doesn't see it as that risky of a move. At least he tells that to his friends, so they let him go. What if it tempt you toward the flood, my lord? Tempt you toward the flood, my lord, asks Horatio. So toward, I believe, destruction is what he means by the flood there. Or to the dreadful summit of, so yeah, destruction, yeah, dangerous place. Tempt you toward the flood, my lord, or the dreadful summit of a cliff that beetles o'er his base into the sea, and there assumes some other horrible form which might deprive your sovereignty of reason and draw you into madness. Think of it. So Horatio is saying it might take you somewhere dangerous and startle you so much that your reason, and that word comes up a lot, right? Your rational thought, your ability to think through things in a rational way, that your reason could be turned to madness. You could be somewhere dangerous, lose your mind, and something terrible could happen. The very place puts toys of desperation. So toys here means impulses. The very place puts toys of desperation without more motive into every brain that looks so many fathoms to the sea and hears it roar beneath. So this would be people familiar with the ocean, right? It's up north, it's cold, and there's beauty in the ocean, but there's also danger in the ocean as well. And Horatio says it can cause you to lose your mind, hearing its roar and looking at the vastness of it. It waves me still. Go on. I'll follow thee. So that's to the ghost. He says, I'll follow you. So he kind of ignores Horatio's warning and says he will follow it. You shall not go, my lord. They hold back Hamlet. Hold off your hands. Be ruled, you shall not go. My fate cries out and makes each petty artur in this body as hardy as the Nemean lion's nerve. Still am I called. Unhand me, gentlemen. By heaven, I'll make a ghost of him that lets me. I say away. Go on. I'll follow thee. So go on, I'll follow these to the ghost. Nemean lion is the lion that Hercules has to kill. So very strong lion. And he says he's made, my fate cries out and makes each petty artur, artery here. In this body is hardy, right? It's his destiny. It's his fate. He has to follow the ghost. He has to learn from it. Hamlet is someone who always needs to know more. He's a very speculative, inquisitive, and curious character. So he has to know more. And he even threatens them. He says he will make a ghost of anyone who doesn't let him go see the ghost, which is, it's a threat on their life. Maybe not a serious one, but it's serious language, at least. And he tells the ghost, go on, I'll follow thee. Ghost and Hamlet exit. Horatio and Marcellus just to each other now. He waxes desperate with imagination. Let's follow. 'Tis not fit thus to obey him. Have after. To what issue will this come? Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Heaven will direct it. Nay, let's follow him. And something is rotten in the state of Denmark is one of the most famous lines in this play. A lot of famous lines, as I said, that's one of the most famous. It's parodied and spoofed all the time in pop culture. And it's very connected, right? There's a musical, Something Rotten, that's, Shakespeare, Hamlet based. What it means, though, is something's wrong. There's something rotten in the state of Denmark, means something is wrong. And the ghost proves that. And it's worth pointing out that as friends, Horatio and Marcellus follow Hamlet at a risk to angering him when he seems very desperate, when he seems to not be thinking straight. And I also want you to remember that warning that Horatio gives him of being driven mad by this spirit, being driven insane by it. That will come back around in a very interesting way in a couple of scenes. Today, we are going to close out Act 1 by looking at 1-5. So where we last left off, we had that really short scene where Hamlet agreed to go with the ghost. The ghost is still not spoken yet in the play, but in 1-5, we'll finally get to hear what he has to say. Okay, so just Hamlet and the ghost now. Hamlet says, "Whither wilt thou lead me? Speak, I'll go no further. Mark me," which means pay attention to me. So first words of the ghost, Shakespeare has left the audience and us readers in suspense for 4 full scenes all the way to 1-5. And the ghost says, pay close attention. "I will. My hour is almost come when I to sulphurous and tormenting flames must render up myself. Alas, poor ghost, pity me not, but lend thy serious hearing to what I shall unfold. Speak, I am bound to hear. So art thou to revenge when thou shalt hear." What? 2 things that I think are really interesting there. First off, we find out that the ghost is not having a very pleasant resting experience in the afterlife. After he gets done speaking to Hamlet, when morning comes and he must leave to go back to that undiscovered country, the afterlife, he's going to be subject to tormenting flames. And then the ghost gives us our call to action, which is the word revenge. That's the big call to action. "So art thou to revenge when thou shalt hear it." What? "I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fast and fires till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are burnt and purged away. But that I am forbid to tell the secrets of my prison house, I could a tale unfold whose lightest word would harrow up thy soul, freeze thy young blood, make thy 2 eyes like stars start from their spheres, thy knotted and combined locks to part, and each particular hair to stand on end like quills upon the fearful porcupine. But this eternal blazon must not be to ears of flesh and blood." So quite a lot to say there. We find out that the ghost is in purgatory. So in especially Catholic theology, purgatory is a place kind of in between heaven and hell. And you go there if you have sins that need to be repaid still, business that still needs to be done, and people pray for you in the afterlife, or you spend a certain amount of time there until you go to heaven. But it's not a pleasant place to be. It's usually thought of, I don't know if it's usually thought of as torturous like the ghost says here. It's more of thought of as a waiting room is how I've always kind of envisioned it. But it seems to be what the ghost is saying, that there's a payment that must be made. Just a little digression here. Shakespeare was born right on the cusp of England switching back and forth from Catholicism to Protestant Anglican beliefs, kind of back and forth. And being on the wrong side of that was very dangerous. Shakespeare's cousin was executed for being a priest who was administering Catholic communion when it was illegal to do so. So we're never quite sure where he falls on the Protestant Catholic line. he has characters who fall on either side of it. And it was probably a smart choice back then to not be openly too set in one belief, because if the royals changed the belief system, it could be incriminating all of a sudden. But it's interesting here. We see that the ghost is expressing a Catholic theology with purgatory. But it's not a pleasant place, right? It's not a waiting room. It is a place where you're burning up for your crimes. And he can't even tell us. We're left in this ambiguous horror. The ghost says, if I could tell you what it's like, it would do all these things to you, like unknot your hair and make your eyes bulge from your head and harrow up your soul, which a harrow, I have a picture of it here on page 10 of the Folger. Showed this in an earlier scene. It's a farming implement to like aerate the ground. It's the second time that word has been used. There it is. Second time the word's been used in the play so far. So that right there is a harrow, and it would stick into the ground to rip it up for farming. And having that happen to your soul would not be great. And also your hair would stand on end like a porcupine, which is kind of a cute image after all that horrific description. Anyway, back to what the ghost can tell us. The ghost says, list, oh listen. If thou didst ever thy dear father love, O God, revenge his foul and most unnatural murder. Murder most foul, as in the best it is, but this most foul, strange, and unnatural. So the characters are really kind of jumping on each other's lines here, like finishing the meter. And I hate to interrupt it, but a few things that are worth pointing out. Lots of talk of nature and what's unnatural, which I've mentioned. Nature and the natural order of things is a huge theme in this play. But what I'm really struck by is that we have the word murder said 3 times in a row. Most unnatural, murder most foul. So there's this real quick boom, boom, boom. And the music of the verse of the lines is really kind of driving this home. So we've had revenge. I am your father. Kind of a Star Wars moment. Not really. But just confirming that I don't just look like your father. I am your father. And I was murdered. That's what you need to take care of. That's what you need to revenge. Haste me to know it, that I, with wings as swift as meditation or the thoughts of love, may sweep to my revenge. Meaning I will act as quickly as I can think it. I will act it. I find thee apt, and duller shouldest thou be than the fat weed that roots itself in ease on Leaf Wharf. Wouldst thou not stir in this? So Leaf Wharf is the bank of the river Leaf, which is the river of forgetfulness in mythology. So if you hear what I'm going to say to you and you don't go act upon it, it would be like you were a fat weed growing on the banks of the river of forgetfulness. Now, Hamlet here. 'Tis given out that sleeping in my orchard a serpent stung me. So the whole ear of Denmark is by a forged process of my death rankly abused. So that's the official story. That while the king was sleeping, King Hamlet was sleeping in his orchard, a serpent came up and bit him, poisoning him and killing him. That's what the official story of his death is. But know, thou noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. O my prophetic soul, my uncle, I, that incestuous, that adulterate beast with witchcraft of his wit, with traitorous gifts, O wicked wit and gifts that have the power so to seduce. Before we get to his thoughts on his wife, let's just throw that out there, that the ghost claims he was murdered and that the murderer is the one wearing his crown, which would be his uncle. So that would be some major news for Hamlet to hear, that this guy he doesn't like, Claudius, who just married his mother, is not just gross and not just unnaturally quick at getting over the death of his brother, not just taking the throne from what should be Hamlet's, he also killed his father. A lot of talk of the ghost disgust that his wife is now married to the person who murdered him. Wicked wit and gifts that have the power so to seduce. One to his shameful lust, the will of my most seeming virtuous queen. We get that word seeming again, or seems, right? The very first time Hamlet's on stage, we get that big discussion of why seems you like this? And he says, it is not me seeming to be mourning. I actually am, unlike you, Mom. Oh, Hamlet, what a falling off was there from me, whose love was that of dignity, that it went hand in hand even with the vow I made to her in marriage, and to decline upon a poor wretch those natural gifts were poor to those of mine. So again, the ghost is saying, kind of like what Hamlet said earlier, that theirs was a happy marriage, and yet here this woman who he thought was virtuous is betraying him after his death. Now, we should point out that at no point do Hamlet claim that Gertrude knows that Claudius killed her husband or suspects Claudius to have killed her husband. Very interesting. Hamlet himself, title character Hamlet, doesn't necessarily know that for sure yet. But just the fact that she married him and so quickly is enough of a betrayal for both of them. But virtue, as it never will be moved, though lewdness court it in a shape of heaven, so lust, though to a radiant angel linked, will sate itself in a celestial bed and prey on garbage. So he's like working through that Gertrude cannot be virtuous because virtue will not be moved even by heaven, whereas lust will go to garbage. Lust will go after garbage. Virtue won't move even with the most beautiful thing tempting it. Virtue stays steadfast. But soft methinks I scent the morning air. Brief let me be. Sleeping within my orchard, my custom always of the afternoon, upon my secure hour, thy uncle stole with juice of cursed Habona in a vial, and in the pouches of my ear did pour the leprous distilment, whose effect holds such an enmity with blood of man that swift as quicksilver it courses through the natural gates and alleys of the body, and with a sudden vigor it doth posit and curd, like eager droppings into milk, the thin and wholesome blood. So did it mine, and a most instant tetter barked about most lazar-like with vile and loathsome crust all my smooth body. So that's the description, according to the ghost, of how he was murdered. And it's really important to remember this description, and it's really interesting. It's not how you would typically think of a poisoning happening, because the poison was not ingested by eating or drinking. It was poured into the king's ear while he slept, and it caused his blood to curdle. There's a word, tetter, barked about. That's skin disease, barked about. It's described as a Lazar-like Lazarus, who is a famous leper in the Bible. So it's like causes a skin disease that could look like a snake poisoning, I suppose. And it murders him and kills him while he's sleeping. Thus was I, sleeping, by a brother's hand of life, of crowned, of queen, at once dispatched, cut off, even in the blossoms of my sin, unhouseled, disappointed, unannulled, no reckoning made, but sent to my account with all my imperfections on my head. So this is the punishment that he's receiving in purgatory, in the afterlife, of having his sin needing to be burned up, because he died without getting his last rites. He died without getting his last forgiveness. He died in sin because he didn't know he was going to die. O horrible, most horrible. If thou hast nature in thee, bear it not. Let not the royal bed of Denmark be a couch for luxury and damned incest. But howsomever thou pursues this act, taint not thy mind, nor let the soul contrive against thy mother aught. Leave her to heaven, and to those thorns that in her bosom lodge, to prick and sting her. Fare thee well at once. The glowworm shows matin, which is morning, to be near, and 'gins to pale his uneffectual fire. Adieu, 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 remember me. And the ghost exits. So the charge to Hamlet was revenge my murder. Fix this issue. But the ghost does say, spare your mother. Let heaven deal with her. You need to take care of the murderer, not your mother. And then he leaves. And so we get Hamlet alone on stage just for a little bit. These lines are interesting, a little confusing, but interesting. He says, "Oh, all you host of heaven, O earth, what else? And shall I couple hell? O fie, hold my heart, and you, my sinews, grow not instant old, but bear me stiffly up. Remember thee? I, thou poor ghost, whiles memory holds a seat in this distracted globe." Distracted globe is probably his head there. Before I get into that, the first thing is he calls to heaven, he calls to earth, and he even thinks about calling to hell. So like all of life, including the afterlife, as he tries to make hold of this. And then he wants himself to be strong. He wants his sinews to be not old, but to bear him up. Remember thee, I, thou poor ghost, whiles memory holds a seat in this distracted globe, remember thee. Yea, from the table of my memory I'll wipe away all trivial fond records, all saws of books, all forms, all pressures past that youth and observation copied there. So the table he's referring to, we think, is these sort of like almanacs that they had back then that were erasable, that you could write in them to like do almanac things, count crops and stuff, the weather. But because there's tables in them, you could reuse them because you could mark them and then erase them. So that's what people think this might mean. A table could also just mean a book in general. But the fact that Hamlet seems to write later on, we get stage direction that he writes, leads people to believe that he has a book. He has a book with him that he can write and erase. So what is he getting at with this table that gets erased? He's saying erase from it anything that is trivial, all the records of your memory, all the books that you've read, all forms, all pressures past that youth and observation copy there, all your memories of youth, erase them and only put in them what he says here, and thy commandment all alone shall live within the book and volume of my brain, unmixed with baser matter. So I will only think of what you said, ghost. Nothing else. Everything else gets wiped away. The only thing on Hamlet's mind will be the command to get revenge. Yes, by heaven. O most pernicious woman, O villain, villain, smiling, damned villain, my tables. So this is his mother he's talking about, right? Meet it is, I set it down, that one may smile and be a villain. At least I am sure it may be so in Denmark. So he writes that down. So the first thing he writes down is not like get revenge. It's like, women, not great. And they can smile and still be a villain. Which is kind of not what the ghost actually told him. The ghost did have nasty things and, injustices against Gertrude, but it said leave her alone. And here he is. That's the first thing he writes down. So we get the stage direction that he writes. So, uncle, there you are. Now to my word. It is a due. So maybe he's writing about his uncle, actually. He says, so uncle, there you are. But it's interesting he talks about woman first before he talks about his uncle. So uncle, there you are. Now to my word. It is adieu, remember me. I have sworn it. Enter Horatio and Marcellus. So Horatio and Marcellus, you'll remember, were told basically on threat of death, don't follow me. Let me follow the ghost and talk to it. And they were like, okay, we're going to follow from a distance because we don't trust you in the presence of this ghost. It could be trying to trick you or destroy you. My lord, Lord Hamlet, heaven secure him. So be it. Hillo, ho, ho, my lord. Hillo, ho, ho, boy. Come, bird, come. Which I guess is Hamlet mocking Marcellus's call, because it sounds like he's calling a bird like a falconer. Being silly and goofy. How fun. How is it, my noble lord? What news, my lord? Oh, wonderful. Good, my lord, tell it. No, you will reveal it. So Hamlet says, no, I will not tell you, because he doesn't want him to reveal it. Not I, my lord, by heaven, nor I, my lord. How say you then? Would heart of man once think it, but you'll be secret. So he's very hesitant to tell them what just happened. I, by heaven, my lord, there's never a villain dwelling in all Denmark, but he's an errant knave, which is a really hard line to figure out. But it means all villains are complete knaves, which are rascals, really. That but in there is used in a different way than we would usually use it. It's less of a contradiction and more of a all of this but that other thing. So you could say like it rains but it pours or something like that. We don't really use it very often in modern English, but basically it's saying that villains are also knaves, which I think means he doesn't trust that. It's either talking about Claudius or it's talking about how easy it is to become a villain, but I think it's Claudius. Horatio says, there needs no ghost, my lord, come from the grave to tell us this. So Horatio's like, I know there's villains in Denmark. Why, right, you are in the right, and so without more circumstance at all, I hold it fit that we shake hands and part. You as your business and desire shall point you, for every man hath business and desire, such as it is, and for my own poor part, I will go pray. So Hamlet tries to release them of this duty. He's like, you speak very true. Go your way, do your thing. I'm going to go pray about what's just happened. But Horatio wants to stick by his side. He says, these are but wild and whirling words, my lord. I am sorry they offend you heartily. Yes, faith, heartily. There's no offense, my lord. Yes, by St. Patrick, but there, which is just swearing by a saint, right? But there is, Horatio, and much offense too. Touching this vision here, it is an honest ghost, that let me tell you. For your desire to know what it is between us, o'ermaster it as you may. And now, good friends, as you are friends, scholars, and soldiers, give me one poor request. What is it, my lord? We will. Never make known what you have seen tonight. My lord, we will not. Nay, but swear it. In faith, my lord, not I. Nor I, my lord, in faith, upon my sword. So he says, swear upon the sword. And you would swear upon the sword because it was, a weapon. So it had significance in that regard, but it was also a cross, right? If you took a sword out, it looks like a cross. So you're swearing upon God as well. We have sworn, my lord, already. Indeed, upon my sword, indeed. So Hamlet is trying to up the swear. He's like, we gave you our word. We won't tell anybody. He's like, no, you need to swear on this. He's trying to make sure. And then this, I don't know if this part's very often performed as much as we see it here, because it's a little silly. But it's kind of cool. The ghost from under the stage yells out, swear. And it seems like perhaps only Hamlet hears it. He's really the only one to mention it happening. You could play it either way, I think. But the ghost yells out, swear, like swear on the sword to keep this a secret. And Hamlet says, ha, boy, sayest thou so? Art thou there, true penny? True penny means honest fellow. Come on. You hear this fellow in the cellarage, consent to swear. So he says they hear it. They don't say, I think they'd say something if they heard it. But so he's like, yeah, the ghost agrees. Let's swear. Propose the oath, my lord. Never to speak of this that you have seen. Swear by my sword. Swear, yells the ghost again. Hic et ubique, which means here and everywhere, right? Yeah, here and everywhere. Then will shrift our ground, come hither, gentlemen, and lay your hands upon my sword. Swear by my sword never to speak of this that you have heard. And the ghost says underneath the stage again, swear by his sword. Well said, old mole. Canst work in the earth so fast, a worthy pioneer. Once more remove, good friends. O day and night. Oh, sorry, let me pause there for a second. So Hamlet says that for that Latin phrase, like the ghost is here and everywhere, says, well, shrift our ground means move our ground. They move to somewhere else on the stage, I guess, to get a private moment away from the ghost. And he asks them to swear again. And they do. The ghost doesn't seem to know that because he says, swear by the sword. And then Hamlet says the ghost is an old mole. Now, we had the word mole earlier in the play. This is one of the things that makes Shakespeare very confusing, but I think fun. Unless you're, have a test coming up, then maybe frustrating, but I think fun. because that's how Shakespeare wrote these plays, to be performed and enjoyed, not tested upon. But anyway, we saw the word mole, and it was when Hamlet was talking about the like bad character trait that people are born with, kind of the curse. He referred to it as a mole. And as I was rereading this scene, I was like, oh, he used the word mole again. Is he saying the ghost has a bad character trait because it's like following them? And then it kind of dawned on me, no, I think he's actually calling the ghost a mole, like a literal mole. I mean, figuratively with the way he's using it, but it's because the ghost is underground, right? It's like moving through the ground like Tremors style to get to wherever they are, and they can't get any privacy. So I found that a little interesting. But more useful for analyzing the play would be, why does Hamlet want privacy from the ghost? He's not angry at the ghost, but he's not being like, yes, here, come ghost, see everything we're doing. He seems to be wanting to do this away from the ghost. And when we read a little further into the play, I think you'll see why Hamlet is not operating in full transparency of the ghost quite yet. But either way, they do swear. He says a worthy pioneer, which is a soldier that would be at the front lines to make like ditches and stuff. Another digging image. Horatio says, "O day and night, but this is wondrous strange. And therefore as a stranger give it welcome. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." So that's a famous line. It's often, well, let's talk about what it means first. There are more things in heaven and earth, meaning there's more stuff in existence, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Philosophy meaning all knowledge, right? Science was called natural philosophy for a very long time before it was called science. So philosophy just means knowledge, and it basically means that you can't know everything. And Horatio is a scholar. He goes to college like Hamlet in Wittenberg, which was historically a place that was at the forefront of teaching students to reason and not just kind of trust old tradition. But what Hamlet is saying here is you can be rational and reasonable. And remember, Horatio didn't believe the existence of the ghost at the beginning of the play, but no matter how smart you are, there will always be stuff you don't know, which I feel like is relevant today as well, right? Sometimes we feel like we have everything figured out, but in actuality, there's things that we discover all the time and things we realize we're wrong about. The way the line is sometimes misremembered, people will say there are stranger things in heaven and earth, Horatio. And it's because the line before that says, wondrous strange. And he says, and therefore as a stranger, give it welcome. And stranger things is kind of got its own meaning in pop culture nowadays. So sometimes people say stranger things, but it's wondrous things. More things. See, I can't even remember it. Anyway, Horatio, then dreamt of in your philosophy. But come, here as before, never, so help you mercy, how strange or odd some ever I bear myself, as I perchance hereafter shall think meet to put an antic disposition on, that you, at such time seeing me, shall never with arms encumbered thus, or with this head shake, or by pronouncing of some doubtful phrase as well, we know, or we could, and if we would, or if we list to speak, or there be an if they might, or such ambiguous giving out to note that you know aught of me, this do swear, so grace and mercy at your most need help you. The ghost underneath says, swear, rest, perturbed spirit. Perhaps the most important thing that you could miss in this scene. I think most people who read this scene catch the ghost says, I'm your dad. I was murdered. It was your uncle. I was murdered in this weird way by poison in my ear. That stuff's not too hard to catch. This, I think people can miss easily if they're not reading carefully. It's what Hamlet says he's going to do from here on out. He says he's going to put on his antic disposition. The Folger edition actually has this in parentheses, which usually when you're reading, parentheses isn't very important, but that phrase is so important. Not saying they are bad editors or anything, but it's interesting because he kind of says it as an afterthought, but it's such an important phrase, is Hamlet's antic disposition. So what does that mean? Antic means crazy, insane, mad. Disposition is how you carry yourself. People have a sunny disposition or a sweet disposition or an angry disposition. An antic disposition means you're crazy. And what Hamlet tells Horatio and Marcellus is you have to swear, not just to not talk about what you saw tonight, but to not disclose to anyone the plan that I have, which is to act crazy. So from here on out, no one will know if I am being Hamlet, the sane individual, or Hamlet, the crazy individual. And he gives examples of how he's going to act crazy. He says, arms encumbered thus. So doing something weird with his arms, or shaking his head, or using these strange phrases that he listed off for us that no one will be able to tell, because they're not going to disclose that this is all Hamlet just acting crazy. No one will be able to tell Hamlet's true motives, his true feelings on things. So why would Hamlet act crazy? It is to give himself cover. Because if he acts crazy, then people will be less suspicious if they catch him doing something he shouldn't. If he's going to investigate, if he's going to plan a revenge and try to kill a king, then he's going to need to step outside of the bounds of how he would typically behave. And if he is crazy, he might just be able to get away with those actions. What's interesting about Horatio and Marcellus knowing this is that we as the audience also know it. So from here on out, when you read, we have to ask ourselves, is that Hamlet or is that antic disposition Hamlet? And there's been a lot of famous productions and a lot of readings of the play see those two Hamlets, Hamlet and antic disposition Hamlet, start to merge. So maybe Hamlet's acting crazy becomes less of an act. One of the things that draws people to this play, especially the role of Hamlet, is there's so many ways to play every line from here on out. Because is it Hamlet or is it crazy Hamlet, or is Hamlet actually crazy? Anyway, so he says, so gentlemen, with all my love, I do commend me to you. And what so poor a man as Hamlet is may do to express his love and friending to you, God willing, shall not lack. Let us go in together, and still your fingers on your lips, meaning quiet. I pray, the time is out of joint. Another famous line, which means chaos, things are not put together properly, disjointed, right? O cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. Nay, come, let's go together. So Hamlet is the one who has to put things back in order. He has to restore the proper order of things because of what the ghost has charged him with. The last thing I want to talk about here, because Marcellus is going to kind of drop off a bit as a character, but Horatio will continue to be a key character in this play. No offense if anyone's out there playing Marcellus. Very important role. Something rotten in the state of Denmark. Super famous line. You know, you're doing Shakespeare. It doesn't matter what role you have. You're doing Shakespeare. Like, awesome. But anyway, Horatio, pretty key character and pretty famous friendship, and a pretty loyal person as well. Oftentimes, you know, people talk about Horatio's name, like the Latin meaning of the name is like reason, and that he's this scholarly person we talked about. I also think it's interesting. I haven't found sources that concur with this, and I'm sure there's like Latin scholars out there that could tell me why this is probably wrong. But the Horatii in ancient Latin texts, these three brothers who agree to fight this other city on behalf of Rome, and basically put their lives to the public good above themselves, are the same root word as Horatio, and are known as incredibly loyal. Now, people probably don't see it as Shakespeare drawing on that tradition, because Horatio is not loyal to the state, he's loyal to his friend. But Hamlet is also kind of the state. And there's a famous painting, this is obviously after Shakespeare, by David, The Oath of the Horatii, which is the three brothers swearing on a sword. And I just think that's Shakespeare's very, very good at picking names, especially with mythological connections. So if it helps you at all, I don't know if it helps you to, like, you don't know who Horatio is, but you know ancient Latin texts. But if it helps you at all to think of that as Horatio is this loyal character, that is, reason is big. And a lot of people say his name is, you know, because of reason and what that means in Latin. But I also think the loyalty is just as big, if not a bigger part of that character. But anyway, that's my little digression and theory. Maybe I'll make a whole video on that one day, so someone smarter on the internet can point out why that's not a justifiable interpretation. I don't know. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. As always, I want to point out, field notes available at the link in the description, 10% off your order, 10% comes back to the channel. This is the most recent quarterly edition, which will be available through the end of the summer. And then when they run out, it's this beautiful, beautiful notebook done by the artist who does a lot of I think all of Radiohead's albums, which is kind of cool, and does some famous book covers. This is the Robert McFarlane novel, Is a River Alive? So it came out to commemorate that. And they're absolutely awesome embossed notebooks. And if you're interested in them, you can save some money and help out the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time in Act 2, and be on the lookout for a video coming out very soon, hopefully tomorrow, that is not Shakespeare related, but I put a ton of time into. So I'd really appreciate, if it's at all interesting to you, you checking it out. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Happy reading.